In the endless dark of space, a message was sent, a message that could change the fate of entire galaxies. The Srazian Empire, once the dominant power in this part of the universe, had fallen into desperation. Their worlds, rich with technology and knowledge, were now in ruins. The Zirvoks, a monstrous alien species, had returned after millennia of silence. Their hunger for power and destruction was unstoppable. They wiped out entire planets without mercy. The Srazian, knowing they could not survive on their own, reached out to every corner of the galaxy, pleading for help. But the one thing they asked for in their message was that the species answering their call could not be involved in the war. They needed an outsider, someone with fresh eyes and new tactics, someone who wasn't already fighting for their own survival. What the Srazian didn't expect was that their message would reach the one species they feared the most, the humans. On the other side of the galaxy, in a sector known as the Dead Zone, the Deathworlders, humans who thrived on harsh, unforgiving planets, received the Srazian plea. The humans weren't interested in politics or diplomacy. To them, everything in space was about survival, and if that meant picking a side, they would do so on their own terms. Admiral Kellen Dray, commander of the human Deathworlder fleet, read the message with a sense of disbelief. The Srazian wanted help. They who had once looked down on humans as little more than primitive scavengers were now begging for their aid. Help them, Kellen muttered under his breath, looking at the holographic map in front of him. The Srazian had been known for their arrogance, their obsession with control, and their technology. They were not a species that would normally seek help, especially not from humans. But their desperation was clear. Kellen could almost feel the fear in their words. He made his decision. "We're going to help them," he said, turning to his second-in-command, Captain Lyra Anders. "But we're not doing this for free. They'll pay the price for their arrogance." The first contact, the Srazian fleet waited nervously as the human ships arrived. They had anticipated that someone would answer their call, but they had not prepared for what they saw. Instead of sleek, advanced warships, the human fleet appeared ragged and rough, ships of various designs patched up and seemingly thrown together. The ships were heavily armed, but they lacked the smooth, clean lines of the Srazian vessels. Admiral Dray's flagship, the Vengeance, was the largest ship in the fleet. It looked like a beast of metal, scarred by countless battles. It was a symbol of humanity's strength, imperfections and all. Kellen stood at the helm, looking out at the Srazian fleet, a smug smile on his face. The Srazian leaders, standing on their command ship, exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected someone more refined. The humans were wild, untamed, and they were everything the Srazian feared. A transmission came through, and the Srazian leader, Supreme General Valnara, stepped forward. She spoke in a commanding tone, but her voice was laced with uncertainty. "This is Supreme General Valnara of the Srazian Empire," she said. "You received our distress call. Are you the ones who will save us from the Zirvok threat?" Kellen's voice crackled through the communication system. "We received your call," he said flatly. "We'll help. But don't get any ideas about controlling the terms of the deal. You wanted our help? You'll get it, but it's going to cost you." Valnara was taken aback by his directness. She had expected at least some form of politeness, some form of diplomatic niceties, but this human was blunt, almost harsh. Still, she didn't have the luxury of time. The Zirvoks were coming, and they were ruthless. "Name your price, human," Valnara said, gritting her teeth. Kellen paused for a moment, considering. "I'm going to need access to your fleets, your best ships, and your full cooperation in a few modifications. In return, we'll crush the Zirvoks." Valnara felt a wave of anger rise within her. How dare this human demand anything from her empire in return for a simple favor? But her mind raced, and she knew she had no choice. The Zirvoks would be here soon, and if they didn't act, the Srazian Empire would fall. "Agreed," she said through clenched teeth. Training the Srazian army. The first few days after the humans arrived were tense. The Srazian fleet was still in shock over their new alliance, and they had no idea how to deal with the humans' strange methods. While the Srazian preferred to fight with overwhelming force, relying on their superior numbers and firepower, the humans had a very different approach. They thrived in chaos, using unpredictability and surprise to strike fear into their enemies. Admiral Dray immediately began instructing the Srazian commanders on how to fight like humans. They were forced to learn new tactics, stealth, hit-and-run strikes, ambushes, and guerrilla warfare. The Sarazian generals were not pleased with these new methods, but Admiral Dre was insistent. They had no time to waste. "We're going to do things my way," Dre said firmly as he watched the Sarazian fleet train. "If you want to survive this, you're going to fight like the humans. No more relying on your fancy weapons. It's time to get your hands dirty." The Sarazian officers exchanged confused looks, unsure of what to make of Dre's words. They had never fought like this before, and many were hesitant. But the humans were showing them results. Day by day, the Sarazian learned to adapt to the harsh reality of human warfare. The Deathworlder soldiers, who had lived their entire lives on dangerous planets, had seen combat in ways the Sarazian could barely comprehend. They shared their brutal knowledge with the Sarazian, teaching them how to fight in the darkness, how to survive against overwhelming odds, and how to break the enemy spirit. The first battle. Chaos unleashed. The day of the first battle came quickly. The Zirvok fleet, massive and terrifying, appeared on the edge of Sarazian space. Their ships were massive, their weapons capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single shot. The Sarazian fleet was no match for them in a direct confrontation, but the humans didn't care about that. Admiral Dre had already formulated a plan. The Deathworlder ships split into smaller groups, moving quickly and unpredictably, striking at the Zirvok ships before disappearing into the darkness of space. The Sarazian watched in horror as the humans' tactics unfolded. The Deathworlders didn't fight with overwhelming firepower. They fought with cunning, attacking at the most vulnerable moments. They distracted the Zirvok with false signals, tricking them into attacking decoy ships while the real human fighters struck from the shadows. The Sarazian were stunned. This was not the way they had ever fought a battle. The Zirvok, expecting an easy victory, were quickly overwhelmed by the chaos. The Sarazian fleet, following the humans' example, began to strike with the same unpredictability. The battle turned into a nightmare for the Zirvok, as they were torn apart from all sides. Admiral Dre's voice echoed through the comms, calm and collected. "Keep them on their toes. Don't give them a moment to breathe. We're going to break them." And they did. By the end of the battle, the Zirvok flagship was crippled, its crew in disarray. The Sarazian were victorious, but only because the humans had shown them how to fight in a way they never thought possible. The cost of victory. The victory was sweet, but it came at a cost. The Sarazian fleet had suffered heavy losses and many of their ships had been damaged. But it was a victory nonetheless, and one that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in the Sarazian Empire's history. As the dust settled, Admiral Dre stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, staring out into the stars. His fleet had won, but there was still much to do. The Zirvok were not defeated yet. "Ready the fleet," he ordered. "We're not done here." The humans had responded and they had delivered. But the war was far from over. And in this galaxy there was only one rule: survive by any means necessary.